This morning that apparently San Diego County has joined the lawsuit against the sanctuary state of California, joining the Department of Justice lawsuit as well. Are we reaching a critical mass? Because slowly but surely, so many localities and now counties in Southern California are saying, hey, Sacramento, Jerry Brown, just stop it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Steve. Thanks for having me this morning. You know, speaking for myself on this and looking at California, I know Los Alamitos was one of the first cities to push back against California's sanctuary state. They said that these are laws that are completely disregarding the Constitution, and there are a number of Californians that are tired of the lawlessness, and they're tired of seeing the lawlessness paraded around by those members of the political class in whom they invested their authority to carry out the law. And they're also tired of being worried in their own communities. I mean, there was the DOJ actually, or DHS, sorry, came out with a report saying that, what was it, 1/3 of about 150 MS-13 gang members that had been in custody were released in California. California is protecting the criminal element at the expense of citizens' safety, and California residents have had enough.
I think it was 2/3 were from California.
But what about the governor? The governor is saying that Fox News is exploiting this issue. We've interviewed so many parents that have lost their kids by criminal illegal aliens that continue to get back in our country, or they were never detained by ICE or never sent back to their countries.
Yeah, I would love for the governor to look at Kate Steinle's family and tell them that that anyone but California is exploiting this issue, or say the same thing to Jamil Shaw Sr., whose son would be alive today if perhaps California government had done their job. I think that's kind of a disgraceful remark for the governor of California to make, because it's his own lawlessness that's pushed this problem, not Fox News. I mean, blaming Fox News for your refusal to uphold the Constitution and your refusal to work with ICE and make sure that your citizens are safe, that's a dereliction of duty. That's not media malpractice.
Yeah, I mean, you got a choice. What's more important, American citizens or the world citizens? You were elected for American citizens, and that's really that's really where the rubber hits the road. There's another story out there as we get closer to the midterm elections. Believe it or not, we still got months. The Planned Parenthood has an ungodly amount of money going to the Dems for the midterms. $30 million, and yet they're still being subsidized with taxpayer dollars. Does that seem legitimate?
No, it's appalling. I mean, I've said this before, and I've talked about this on my program, and it's infuriating to me to see so many taxpayers robbed, and that's what it is. You have innocent American taxpayers who are being robbed to pay an organization that in turn spends our money on Democrat campaigns. We as Americans are being forced to fund Democrat campaigns, because that's who Planned Parenthood funds, to the tune of $500 million a year. This is happening, and this is a for-profit business, and if they can afford to spend millions and millions of dollars on all of these Democrat politicians and to pay for and buy influence in Washington, D.C., well, then they can very much afford to operate without the indulgence of society's forced tax funding, and that's what this is. I mean, it's appalling, and this was one of the things that I was in this omnibus that I wish had not been continued, because we had a chance to not continue to fleece taxpayers to support Democrats.
And I'm glad you mentioned that at the end, because ultimately, I mean, if Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell didn't want it there, they got pens. They could have scratched it out, but no, it went right through. So blame the Republicans.
Yeah, it did go right through. Under Republicans, which is appalling. I mean, and Republicans, they pretended to hear what voters were saying about wanting to keep more of their own money and about limited government. This isn't the way to do it, to rob the people that voted for them to pay for their opponents. I mean, they're financing their opposition. They're financing Hillary Clinton. $38 million was spent by Planned Parenthood on Hillary Clinton. We paid for it.
They said that they did it so they got fully funded Defense Department, but it shouldn't have been that trade-off. Meanwhile, James Comey's doing his endless media tour, and I think it's beginning to blow up on him. He's getting even tougher questions now, and he seems to have no answers. Talking about politics, listen.
You sound like a political commentator to me more than
I don't mean to be.
director.
I don't care whether people support a Republican or a Democrat, because I'm not either. I don't care who they support. I hope the conversation will start with values and come to policy second, because we're always going to fight about guns and taxes and immigration, but all we are as this country is a collection of values.
What's your reaction, Dana?
Yeah, Ainsley, you can't pretend to lecture Americans from this ivory pedestal about values and virtue while simultaneously making snarky remarks about the size of the president's hands and the circles under his eyes. He stepped all over the message of his own book because he wrote it like he's Regina George writing the Burn book. That's what James Comey sounds like. I have never seen a cattier man than James Comey. And so he gets in his own way. He tries to portray himself as this virtuous example that all of everyone in Washington should follow, but he gets in his own way because his book is so petty. No one's paying attention to anything else in his book. They're all talking about how petty he is. And he knows better than that. I just think he is. He wanted to. He has the spine of jelly. He was able to be influenced by public opinion and politics. He was able to be influenced by Loretta Lynch. He was a bad FBI director, and he tried to, because of his bad leadership, he attempted to stain all of the really good FBI agents that are under him.
Yep, and now he's attempting to sell as many books as possible during this book tour. If he'd like to stop by our show, we'd love to have him, but I don't think, he's going to just very
I'd love to watch him on your show.
I know. Mr. Comey, if you're watching, call us.
Come on.
All right.
Dana, nice to see you.
Dana.
Thank you. Earlier in his career, and he says, this reminds me of that. Let's bring in Anthony Scaramucci now, former White House communications director. Had a chance to digest this, and also, you know what it's like to be a businessman in New York, and this president was a businessman in New York. Anthony, welcome back.
It's great to be here.
Are you insulted by that?
Listen, here's the problem for Italian Americans. I can be insulted by that, but I really can't do anything about it because for whatever reason, it's still an unprotected class of people where they can say whatever they want about it. I'm in the White House. They're saying I'm a walking pinky ring. Imagine if I was another ethnic group, they couldn't say that, right? But it just speaks to Comey's sanctimony and his lack of awareness in terms of his language, his lack of awareness of who he is as a guy. They call him Cardinal Comey for a reason. He thinks he's got the answers. He thinks he's at that, that papal throne, and he's the one that's going to make these decisions. Look at what he did to Loretta Lynch, Attorney General Lynch. He abrogated her process, and he went out to the press on his own to speak about the campaign, and he made a decision based on politics, okay? And the president's 100% right about this. This was purely politically motivated by James Comey. He looked at the tea leaves. He said, Secretary Clinton's winning. Let me go out there and do this. And then he realized he had some trouble as it related to the Anthony Weiner emails. And then he had a flip-flop on that. And so now he's got every side of the equation disliking him because of the politics.
You read the book. What did you think of the book? What did you
Okay, so I want to be fair about the book. I thought we talked about his upbringing. I was very impressed with his upbringing. When he talks about the culture inside the FBI, he's very impressed with that. He obviously loves President Obama. He has a right to do that. And he tries to act like he's nonpartisan, but he's actually very partisan. And so, when you see his family out there in the Women's March and you see his wife admitting that she desperately wanted Secretary Clinton to be the first woman president,
sure.
Very, very partisan. But that's okay that you're partisan, but let's tell the American people how partisan you are, and let's drop the sanctimony. So I don't like the Italian-American stuff. I don't like the hits on the president for another reason. You worked for the president. He was your boss, okay? He elected to fire you. I got fired. No big deal. I'm still loyal to the president. And I think that when you're the director of the FBI, you're at a certain level where he is the president. Subordinate yourself to the president, okay, and zip your mouth, okay? Now, someone will say that, well, what about you and John Kelly? I don't know John Kelly, okay? And John Kelly wasn't even a part of the campaign. And so, what John Kelly did, and my issue with John Kelly is not even related to him firing me. It's the way he's running the White House. So I just want to make that clear as well.
Ultimately, people like you are worried about the president, because it feels like the Democrats are coming after him, and the question of whether or not he obstructed justice at any point along, during his time as president, or the Russian collusion. Regarding obstruction of justice, last night, Mr. Comey said, it's possible.
He said a lot of things like that last night, and by the way, I thought George Stephanopoulos was a very objective interviewer. He pointed out to James Comey what some of the flaws were in his argument, and he also was pointing out to James Comey, and if you were watching it last night, which I did, you're like, okay, this gentleman lacks some level of self-awareness. He's literally has a journalist explaining to him what the defects are, what the flaw.
Can't afford not